Welcome, guys, people from St. Francis of Assisi and Bakersfield. Good to have you back again. Well, we're on our last night. The last 2 weeks, we've been talking about the Gospel of Mark. And now we're at the point where we're dealing with the burial of Jesus. We've covered extensively the last 2 weeks the issues and reasons why Jesus was arrested. The fact that the last 2 days we've covered the passion narratives. This morning we covered the crucifixion scene, and now we'll have the burial scenes, both found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And then I will also use the one found in John to give you a real complete understanding of what's going on. And then the issue of the resurrection in Mark's gospel. So we are now on Mark chapter 15, verses 42 to 47. So Jesus has died on the cross. Okay, he's dead. Now this is another issue. He isn't swooning. He didn't faint. He did not assume into heaven without dying on the cross. There are certain other monotheistic religions that believe that he didn't die, but was assumed into heaven. We do not hold that. We hold that his death was efficacious and sacrificial, and that it actually occurred. Because we also believe that the incarnation is genuine, that the Word of God became flesh and dwelt among us. He had the fullness of human nature and the fullness of divine nature. Again, and that in that reality of the hypostatic union, that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. It was a real body. Jesus had a real human soul, human intellect, a rational intellect, a real human will. He was animated by an actual biological body that grew from infancy to adulthood. He also had divine nature. Whatever the Father and the Spirit is, Jesus also is. We're not dealing with three gods, we're dealing with one God. And the mind of God, the will of God, the word of God, the law of God took on flesh in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. And he comes and he preaches and teaches what the Father's asked him to do. And as part of the Father's plan that he undergo crucifixion, death, and burial, and on the third day rise from the dead. This is not a historical accident. We believe as Catholic Christians that this is predestined by God before the foundation of the world. He has destined us in love to be his sons through Jesus Christ before the foundation of the world, St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians. So Jesus has died on the cross, and it's interesting. This is why where you place Jesus's death. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, in the synoptic tradition, it's the Passover. However, in John, Jesus dies when they slaughtered the lambs on the day of preparation for the Passover. Because in John's gospel, Jesus is that Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. So when the Passover lamb is being sacrificed, Jesus is also being sacrificed. So there's a literary motif there that John wanted to keep. However, that motif is not found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus dies during the Passover. Okay, so the day of preparation has already come and gone. Okay, but not in John. John wants to emphasize Jesus's death is in fact sacrificial. His death takes away sin. And like the Passover lamb that was slaughtered, and then the blood of the lamb, they took hyssop in Exodus chapter 12 and anointed the lintel doorposts of each home with the blood of the lamb. When Jesus dies on the cross, they dip hyssop in vinegar or soured wine and put it to his lips, because he is the blood of the Lamb. So again, there's all sorts of literary issues here that the gospel writers, all of them, wanted to make sure that the apostolic community understood the solemnity and the gravity of Christ's death and the ultimate glorification of what the Father wills us to go through, passion, death, and resurrection, and that the kingdom of Satan, which causes death in the universe, no longer exists. Jesus triumphs over death. So he gives us the opportunity to be with God in heaven. So he opens the reality of the fullness of human existence with divine existence perpetually. Death is destroyed by the death of Jesus. So now he's being buried. Okay. Mark 15, 42 to 47. When evening had come, and since it was the day of the preparation, that is the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, namely the Jewish Sanhedrin. So this is where we get the information, most probably from members of the Sanhedrin that did not vote for Jesus's death. Okay, so Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was himself also waiting expectantly for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Now that would have taken a great deal of nerve. This Jesus, this number one criminal who's been executed, I like to have his body. So what are we going to do with this man? You know, what are we going to do with the body of Jesus? He's dead. Okay. Then Pilate wondered if he were already dead, and summoning the centurion, they see this is the secular death certificate. This is important. At no time did any of the apostles have access to the body of Jesus once he died. Plain and simple. Okay. Then Pilate wondered if he had already was dead, and summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had been dead for some time. When he had learned from the centurion that he was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. Then Joseph bought a linen cloth, and taking down the body, wrapped it in the linen cloth and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of rock. Then he rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where the body lay. Okay. In Luke, it's very interesting. Luke had this is Luke chapter 23. Now there was a good and righteous man named Joseph, who, though a member of the council, had not agreed to the plan of action. So there was dissent within the Sanhedrin. He came from the Jewish town of Arimathea, and he was waiting expectantly for the kingdom of God. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. He took it down, wrapped it in a linen cloth, and laid it in a rock-hewn tomb where no one had ever been laid. Very important. This is not a family tomb. This is a single tomb. Very important. So if you go to the Kidron Valley, there are many tombs, and you would have a vestibule. Then you walk inside, and this is where you have slabs where you would rest the body. You'd put the body on this or that slab or this or that pedestal, and then it would simply decay after it had been wrapped and everything else. This is not a family tomb. This is a single tomb. So it's not a matter of which body did the apostles steal from the tomb and say Jesus has been raised from the dead. No, that's out of the question. So it's a brand new tomb belonging to Joseph of Arimathea. No one has ever been laid in it, so no one's switching bodies. Okay. And it was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning, so they had to get the body off the cross, wrapped it, and have it installed in the tomb before the Sabbath began, or they would have been in ritualistic defilement. That's why they break the bones of the other two criminals. And coming to Jesus, they already saw that he had already expired. And so therefore, they did not break his bones. They simply took him down, wrapped him up. And then Luke wants to say, the women who had come with him from Galilee followed, and they saw the tomb and how the body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath day, rested according to the commandment. So in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there is no mortuary treatment, except wrapping quickly the body. That's why they come the first day of the week to anoint the body, to finish the mortuary treatment that would have been normally done by custom whenever you had a funeral, okay? In Matthew, Joseph of Arimathea goes to Pilate. Then Pilate ordered to be given to Joseph the body, took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and laid it in his own new tomb. It's his tomb. Notice in Mark, it's a tomb. Luke is a brand new tomb in which no one has ever been laid. And in Matthew, it is specific. It's the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea that has never been used. So there is a variation in the parallel narrative, and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. Then he rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. Okay. And John is a very different episode. Let's go through it. Okay. This is chapter 19 of John's Gospel book, verse 38. After this, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, but as secretly for fear of the Jews, asked Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus. And Pilate gave him leave. So he came and took away his body. Nicodemus also, who had first come to him by night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds of weight. Now you say, you don't need 100 pounds of spices and oils and myrrh and the rest to anoint the body of Jesus. So why this number? This is not found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Okay? It's only found in John. Well, the reason is in John's gospel, Jesus is King of Israel. It's a royal entombment. So there is a great abundance of spices and herbs, and they fulfill the mortuary treatment then and there. Not found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Okay? Jesus dies as King of Israel. So his body will be treated like a king that has passed. See, there's a difference here. Not only is he the Lamb of God, not only does he sacrificially die as the Lamb of God, takes away the sins of the world, which is the first part of John's gospel, he's King of Israel. And not only King of Israel, he is the messianic fulfillment, the expectation of God is going to send a Messiah has now been fulfilled. Jesus is the long-awaited messianic figure. Okay. So in verse 39 of chapter 19, so Nicodemus also, who had first come to him by night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds in weight. They took the body of Jesus and bound it in linen clothes with spices, as is the burial custom of the Jews. Now, in a place where he was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden, a new tomb where no one had ever been laid. So there's continuity here with Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It's a new tomb, and it's never been used. That's very important. There's only one body that's in the tomb, and that's going to be the body of Jesus, no one else. Okay. So because of the Jewish day of the Sabbath, as the tomb was close at hand, they laid Jesus there. Okay. Well, we have the resurrection narratives. It's very interesting. Now, after the Sabbath, okay, because they couldn't work on the Sabbath, remember? That's the commandment. You shall not create, you shall not produce, and you shall not transform. You are to rest on the Sabbath. Okay, in chapter 20 in John, now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. Okay, we'll read that in Mark next. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple whom Jesus loved, namely John. And they said to them, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him. The body is gone. The disciples did not have access to the dead body of Jesus once Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea laid the body in the tomb and then rolled the stone over it. We'll talk about that when we hit Mark. So Peter then came out with the other disciple, and they went toward the tomb. They both ran, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. And stooping to look in, he saw that the linen clothes lying there, but he did not go in. This is a very important issue. If you are in hiding because they got Jesus, and now you're next in line, and that's why in John's gospel, Annas, the former high priest and father-in-law of Caiaphas, the present high priest, asked two questions of Jesus. What is your doctrine? And who are your disciples? We got you, we want the rest. So they are in hiding for fear of their lives. And it's interesting, John has both John and Peter running to the tomb. Well, if you don't want to be recognized, or you don't want to be captured or to be noticed, why in heaven's name are you running? If you're running from something or someone, you are going to be noticed. Very interesting. So John outruns Peter, gets to the tomb, stoops in and looks and sees the linen separate. Let's look at this. And stooping to look in, he saw the linen clothes lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came following him, went into the tomb and saw the linen clothes lying, and the napkin which had been on his head, not lying with the rest of the linen clothes, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in and saw and believed. For as yet they did not know the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to their homes. Okay. If you're going to steal a body, you want to get in the tomb as fast as you can and then take the body and run. Why in heaven's name will you unwrap a decaying body. Makes no sense whatsoever. You know, if you're going to rob a tomb, you are going to go in as fast as you possibly can, hopefully not be noticed, and take whatever you want from the tomb. So if you're a grave robber and you are going to steal the body of Jesus, why in heaven's name will you unwrap it? You're not going to unwrap a dead, decomposing, oozing body with bodily fluids. You are not going to unwrap it. So it's plain to see that when Jesus rises from the dead, he removes the napkin off his face, rolls it up, and puts it aside. That's a very important issue. It was customary when you're having a meal and there are quite a few people in attendance, and when the meal is over, whatever you wanted to do is now over, you would leave your napkin, which was the means by which you ate from a common plate, you know, then clean your hands, then went back to the plate again. If your napkin was folded up and put in an orderly place by the place where you were lying, because you were eating in the extended Hellenistic manner of dining. If Jesus is right-handed, he'd be laying on his left side on a pillow cushion and then eating with his right hand, okay? Then using the napkin to wipe his fingers as he puts food into his mouth. If you were coming back to finish your meal, you would not leave the napkin in a way that indicated that you were not coming back. The fact that it is folded in a certain way and then put to the side means that I'm not finished. I'm coming back. So by analogy, similar yet dissimilar, Jesus takes the linen cloth over his head, folds it neatly, and separates it from the rest of the shroud, as if to say, I'm coming back. That's the sign. And that's why John has, when John and Peter see the napkin, that's when they believe. He's not dead. It wasn't a matter of just taking off the cloth and tossing it somewhere. No, he folded it up nicely. Something that he would normally do. See, that's what Jesus signed. That's what he would do. And the sign simply says, I'm coming back. I'm not dead. I'm alive. And you will see me. You will see me. So we now go to Mark's resurrectional account, and we read the following. This is Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might anoint the body of Jesus. They believed that he was not going to rise from the dead. See, you got to understand something. Why would you steal a body when you never understood in the first place that he was going to rise from the dead? The enemies of Israel, the Jewish Sanhedrin, or the elders of Israel, remembered or got the news that he had talked about being raised from the dead on the third day. But the disciples of Jesus, for whatever reason, did not understand that. And of course, this happens all the time. I find it fascinating that if you have people that don't like you, notice that people don't like you, they will remember every doggone thing you've ever said. But you yourself will, in fact, have forgotten the many issues that they will gladly bring up to suit their own purposes. So the enemies of Jesus had heard that he would rise on the third day. So we got to make sure that the tomb is secured with a sealing stone, with the sealing mark, and with a guard placed. We don't want anyone leaving that tomb. To put a guard there. Mary Magdalene went to the tomb because she thought the body would be there. They did not understand that he was to arise from the dead. That's why in Matthew's gospel, chapter 27, 62 to 66, the next day, that is after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate. And he said, "Sir, we remember what that impostor said while he was alive. After 3 days, I will rise again. Therefore, command that the tomb be made secure until the third day. Otherwise, his disciples may go and steal him away and tell the people he has been raised from the dead. And that last deception will be worse than the first." He's a fraud. Pilate said to him, "You have a guard of soldiers. You go make it secure if you can. I'm not sending my guards. You have temple police, use them." So they went with the guard and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone. You touch that seal, that wax seal with the cord, you touch that wax seal, you are a dead person. Likewise, the guard that's at the tomb, you lose the body, you forfeit your right to live. Plain and simple. Okay, this is serious business. We want no one leaving or going into that doggone tomb. He's in the tomb. We made sure that his body's in the tomb. And now there's a guard, and the stone has been sealed. If that seal is broken, or the guards that are guarding it somehow slip up and have the body taken, they will forfeit their life. This is serious business. So Mary Magdalene, the mother of James and Salome, bought spices, is this Mark again, so they might go to anoint him. They did not believe that he was going to rise from the dead. And very early the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone from the entrance to the tomb?" It was a huge stone. When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. And as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting there on the right side, and they were alarmed. He said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He's not here. Look, there's the place they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb in terror, and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. That's Mark. Matthew's is very interesting. How did the tomb get open? Not found in Mark, not found in Luke, it's found in Matthew. Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 10. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was drawing, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake. Classic apocalyptic imagery. Something bizarre is going to happen. Something cosmological is going to happen. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came, rolled back the stone, and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men, so they swooned. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He's not here, for he has been raised, as he said. Come, see the place where he lay." See, so there is that empirical evidence. I want you to look for yourselves. All three Gospels, actually all four Gospels, examine the tomb. He's not there. Okay? Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead. And indeed, he's going ahead of you to Galilee. There you shall see him. And this is my message to you. So they left quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. In Luke, they came with the spices. This is Luke chapter 24. They came with the spices they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. So Luke presumes Mark and Matthew. Okay. But when they went in, they did not find the body. And while they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling white clothes stood beside them. And the women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" Great line. Why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here. He is risen. Remember, because they don't remember. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified and on the third day rise again. Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told the apostles. But these words seemed to be an idle tale, and they did not believe them. Peter got up and ran to the tomb, stooping to look in, and he saw the linen clothes by themselves. Then he went home amazed at what had happened. Okay. So at this point, it's very clear that the 12 apostles, the disciples, the women disciples, etc., did not believe that Jesus was going to rise from the dead. The enemies of Jesus knew it. That's why they put a guard at the tomb to make sure that no one got in and no one got out. But what happens in Matthew's gospel? The angel of the Lord descends from heaven. They swoon. The tomb is empty. How do you get out of the tomb? Well, he can walk through solid matter. That's in Luke's gospel. The post-resurrection, the post-resurrectional narratives. So what about the soldiers? Are they going to forfeit their life? Well, there's a slight problem. This is where we go back to Matthew. And while they were going, some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests everything that had happened. So even though they had swooned, they had seen everything. So the temple guard are eyewitnesses to the resurrection. Do you remember, whenever you have some of these paintings of Jesus rising from the dead, from the tomb, and the guards are going back and all that, that's not biblical. That is an artistic representation. No one sees Jesus leaving the tomb. Okay? No one sees it. What the soldiers see is the angel of the Lord that announces that he's not here. He has been raised. So as they were going, some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests everything that had happened. So they know the truth. After the priests had assembled with the elders, the Sanhedrin, they devised a plan to give a large sum of money to the soldiers, telling them, you must say his disciples came by night and stole him away while you were asleep. You can die for this. You lost the body. And this is Matthew. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble. So you won't be killed. You're not going to forfeit your life. So they took the money and did as they were directed. And this story is still told among the Jews to this day. This is Matthew, written about mid-70s. Luke is written in the 80s and John in the 90s. So that is that's Matthew's understanding of why the eldership of Israel does not believe, at least at his time period. The disciples stole the body. When you look at the Gospels, it's very clear that the 11 apostles and others did not expect Jesus to rise from the dead. Okay. And then going back to John, once Mary Magdalene in John's Gospel goes into the tomb, and what does she see? Two angels, one at the right, one to the left, where the body of Jesus lay. And he's not there. You say, what does that mean? What does that image mean? Well, remember your history. In the temple, the Ark of the Covenant, the chest that has the manna, a copy of the Ten Commandments, and the rod of Aaron were encased in the ark. And the ark had two seraphim, two angels. And it was not the contents of the ark that made the ark holy, but the space between both angels. It was the footstool of Yahweh, pure space. And many times in Jewish history, the angel of the Lord, or God, or the divine presence, would be manifested between the two angels. Okay, that's the footstool of God. So if there was going to be some miraculous divine imaging of God's nature over the ark, not in the ark, but over the ark, where the two angels are, it's pure space. That's where the appearance of God would be. And now we have the slab of Jesus. And we have now two angels, one at the right, one at the left, by the slab of Jesus. You want the presence of God? Jesus is the presence of God. He is the tabernacle. He is the temple. He is the presence of God. Therefore, where he lie, those were the angels. That's the imagery. And it's only found in John. One thing is abundantly clear, that in Mark and the other Gospels, no one expected Jesus to rise from the dead. So why in heaven's name did the enemies of Jesus believe that they stole the body? First of all, if you're going to steal something, you're not going to unwrap it. Okay. Second, a lot of people in the 19th century said that the resurrection of Jesus was a spiritual resurrection, not a bodily resurrection. It is not a biological resurrection. Means that does he take on a biological body? No, the biological body has been transformed. It's a resurrected body. And in Luke's gospel, he appears in Easter evening with the doors being closed. He walks through solid matter, and they think they're seeing a ghost. And no, Jesus says, look, it's me. Examine the wounds. It's me. Give me something to eat. And he eats something. Dead people don't eat. Spirits don't eat. Angels don't eat. Okay? So here's Jesus in his resurrected state. That's why we talk about a bodily resurrection, not a biological one, nor is it spiritual. Spiritual resurrection would not take into account the problem of the dead body of Jesus. Something has to be done with the body of Jesus. If it's just a spiritual resurrection, like he's in our mind, he's in our thoughts, he's in our hearts, so he's there by way of memory, by good feelings, by hope that he is the long-awaited messianic healer, and that's how he's alive. That doesn't account for the biological dead body. Something has to be done with the body. Well, in our Catholic faith, the body's been resurrected and transformed to the point that it can go through solid matter. That's how he can leave the tomb without being noticed. He can vanish immediately. He can be present on the road to Emmaus. They're having supper. He breaks bread and then he vanishes. Then he appears once the other disciples meet the 11 apostles in the upper room. Jesus appears for fear of the Jews. The door is locked, it's barred, and he goes through solid matter. The resurrected body can go through solid matter. And they think they're seeing a ghost. No, it's me. Do you have anything to eat? They gave him a piece of cooked fish and he eats it. Dead people don't eat. Ghosts don't eat. Angels don't eat. It's Jesus in his resurrected state. So it's not a biological resurrection. It's what we call a bodily resurrection, a transformed, resurrected cosmological body. It isn't just spiritual because they can feel him. And the marks of crucifixion are still present. So the historical Jesus is in fact the resurrected Jesus. So the Jesus of history, the Jesus of time and space, the Jesus of humanity now has a resurrected human body. And the body that he has, the good news, that's what we're going to have. Whatever the body that Jesus has, that's what we're going to have. So they can recognize him, they can feel him, and yet he can go through solid matter. And so, as we finish Mark's gospel, understand that he has been raised, and that he's alive. And his own disciples didn't understand that. Only later do they come to a clear understanding that he has in fact been raised. So the point here is, why create some sort of a narrative where the 12 apostles and others come off as not knowing exactly the teaching of Jesus? Why create a resurrected teaching about this long-awaited Messiah dying and rising from the dead when they themselves did not understand that he had to die and that he had to rise, and that no one expected him to rise from the dead? So it's not a made-up literary device to talk about Jesus. The apostles do not come off well. They don't believe the women that have seen the empty tomb. It's only when Peter and John go into the tomb in John's gospel that they see the napkin placed over to the side, folded up beautifully as a sign indicating that Jesus is coming back. And as Catholic Christians, we know that he is. Thus ends the Gospel of Mark. Brian, any questions?
Yes. We have two questions here in the chat. The first one is from Riley. He says, what's the purpose of robbing a dead body in a tomb back then?
There is no purpose. Normally, if you're going to have grave robbery, you only have grave robbery when the person was of high status and the mortuary treatment, such as gifts or whatever the person would have used during his life. So it's clothing, gold, silver, bowls, anything of great value would have been buried with this or that person. So that's why in ancient Egypt, you would always have grave robbery, because when a pharaoh died, you had all this stuff placed in the tomb. So we didn't care about the body. What did he leave in the tomb? So in the case of Christ, there's nothing in the tomb except his wrappings, nothing else. Okay, so that's my point. Why would you steal something from the tomb of Jesus when he was buried with nothing but himself? That's why there's a guard at the tomb. And how could you get in the tomb in the first place if there is a temple guard that's there for 3 days? So only the rich, or those who had fame and fortune, only those tombs would be robbed to basically get the contents. But at the tomb of Christ, there is no content but the body of Jesus. So why would you steal the body? Oh, because we want to say, we want to perpetuate the fraud that he is, that he was raised from the dead. Well, it's very clear that disciples did not have access to the body at no time. At no time. Any other questions?
Yes, we have a question from Victor. He asks, how do we as Christians explain the different gospel resurrection stories to non-Christians? Okay.
How we explain it is the fact that it is the nature of Hebrew writing. It is the nature of the parallel narrative, that we cannot confuse 21st century historicity, historiography, how we view human history, human culture, with our understanding and apply it to a different time period. You got to understand Jewish writing as its own genre. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not reliable. It's just that it is a different way of expressing what they understand truth to be. So you can have one event talked about in many different ways. It would be analogous, for example, on Easter this year, that you come together and celebrate the Feast of Easter. And if you have been inoculated against the virus and you have a family gathering and you have a lot of people there, after the actual gathering, ask people what actually occurred when you got together. You would have different stories, or there would be a different emphasis based on what each and every person understood that which was valuable would in fact be. So it's a matter of perception. We remember things that have meaning, that have value, that have emphasis, and that's how we write. So when the Jews wrote, it isn't just history qua history, or history being written objectively. For the Jew, is how do we experience the activity of God in human history? And not just human history, our Judaic history. Everything else is secondary. Names, dates, people, places, they can be transformed, moved around for emphasis. Now, this doesn't mean that they're not reliable. It simply means it's a different way of looking at human experience and how you record human experience and express human experience. Not everyone thinks the same way that we do. So the methodology or the hermeneutic of how we examine, explain, and understand and articulate human events will change from culture to culture. Not everyone has 21st century objectivity about human history. You can look at human events, human experience differently. And to simply say that if you don't have the historical critical method as your hermeneutical process by which you analyze human conduct, that if you don't use that or don't have that, then the lack of validity or certitude would be present in your account of human history. Well, that's a rather hubris understanding of things. Cultures have different ways of viewing human experience. Therefore, recording of human experience is different. Western style, Eastern style, African style, it's different. And I think we have to respect that type of historical pluralism. So it's not a matter of sacrificing certitude or sacrificing what actually happened. It is a matter of perception. It's a matter of value content. How do we perceive? What do we know? And what meaning does it have for us? And depending on our understanding of meaning, purpose, and value, that's how we will record human, that's how we will record human events. Thank you, Victor. Any other questions?
Yes, we have one more question from John. Please, John, just unmute yourself.
Hi, Father. I just had a couple of quick questions. By and large, what do the scholars of the church think of the Shroud of Turin?
Most scholars would hold that, depending on the carbon-14 dating, and the different types of dating. Jump on a second called it a icon, insofar as the type of data and the type of testing that the Shroud of Turin underwent back in the 80s. Now the type of testing was indeed faulty because they tested burnt areas, so it gave a false age to the shroud itself. However, the stain on the shroud is both the stain of blood and some form of radioactive burning of the cloth. When the resurrected body goes through the cloth, it left the image. So it wasn't painted. Somehow, Christ's body, when it was being raised and brought back to life, radiation or some sort of a light presence scarred the cloth itself, so that there is the image of Christ. Not only that, there are pollen effects that date to the year 2000, and the pollen samples come from Palestine. So it all depends on who's doing the testing and what results will seem satisfactory to the scientific community. I would say that most scholars would say that just simply play it safe, it's an icon or an image of Christ. If, however, you have pollen samples, you have the blood stains, then you might come up with a very different approach, namely that it is genuine.
Just not for sure yet.
No,
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to ask you just real quick is, what do the scholars of the church, what do they think of the apostles of were they literate, and how well did they know the Old Testament at the time?
well, again, we can only surmise from the text, they, the gospel writers were literate, obviously, because they wrote. Now, the eyewitnesses, to whatever form of education that they had, that's what they had, So even though you would say, well, did the 12 apostles know how to write or whatever? Well, we don't know. This doesn't mean that they lack intelligence. It simply means that they might have lacked education. However, but that's why you have St. Paul, who is out of the mode. He was a Jewish scholar. So it all depends. God calls all sorts of people to his own ministry. So to the level that God chose was the level that we received.
And Father, can we see these that we missed? Are these recorded?
These are all on YouTube.
Okay.
Everything's on YouTube. Like the last 2 weeks on YouTube, all of the teachings that I gave last fall are all on YouTube. There are 75 45-minute episodes. And tonight's episode will be brought up to YouTube. I have one more week at St. Philip's on discipleship. And then I have the Gospel of Mark, but from a different perspective when I teach the gospel at St. Martin de Porres in Sarahita, Arizona. Everything that I've said will be or is now on YouTube. So you can see it at any time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And lastly, I'd like to thank Ron Panucci and his family for their assistance in broadcasting the last 2 weeks. They are a wonderful family that aids in the act of evangelization of the gospel of Christ. So Ron and Tony and your family, thank you so much for assisting the Western Dominican province in the act of preaching. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. As Father Jude said, everything will be posted on YouTube. And for more information about future events, please visit stdominics.org. Good night. Thank you for coming.